Imagine landing what looks like one of the coolest jobs in America. You get to work around massive locomotives, travel across hundreds of miles of railroad every week, and become part of an industry that's kept the country moving for nearly 2 centuries. The pay can be excellent, the benefits are often better than average, and unlike many office jobs, no 2 days are exactly the same. It sounds like the kind of career people would fight to get, yet railroad companies across North America are facing a growing problem. They're struggling to hire train conductors, and even more importantly, they're struggling to keep them. Experienced railroaders are retiring early, newer employees are leaving within just a few years, and some railroads are offering hiring bonuses simply to fill positions. So what changed? Why would someone walk away from a career that seems to offer so much? The answer has very little to do with trains themselves. It's everything that comes after you climb aboard. One of the biggest misconceptions about railroading is what a conductor actually does. Ask 10 people on the street, and many will tell you the conductor drives the train. In reality, that's the locomotive engineer's responsibility. The conductor is responsible for almost everything else. Before a train even begins moving, the conductor verifies paperwork, reviews the train's consist, communicates with dispatchers, confirms that every railcar is where it's supposed to be, performs inspections, and ensures the movement can be made safely. During the trip, that responsibility doesn't disappear. If something unexpected happens hundreds of miles from the nearest terminal, the conductor is often the first person expected to solve the problem. That's a lot of responsibility when you're dealing with equipment that can weigh well over 10,000 tons. Unlike a truck, a freight train can't simply steer around an obstacle. Unlike an aeroplane, it can't circle until conditions improve. Every decision has to account for the simple fact that once a train is moving, it requires an enormous distance to stop. A fully loaded freight train traveling at track speed may need well over a mile to come to a complete stop under emergency braking. That means conductors are constantly thinking several steps ahead, watching signals, communicating with the engineer, anticipating movements, and making sure every rule is followed exactly as written. For decades, that responsibility came with rewards that made the career attractive. Railroad jobs were known for excellent wages, strong retirement plans, and reliable employment. Entire communities grew around rail yards where becoming a conductor wasn't just another job, it was a tradition. Parents encouraged their children to join the railroad because it provided a stable future. Some families had 3 or 4 generations working for the same company. It wasn't unusual for someone to spend 40 years on the railroad and retire without ever considering another profession. Today, many conductors still love railroading. What they struggle with isn't the trains, it's the lifestyle. Imagine sitting down for dinner with your family after finally getting a day off. Halfway through the meal, your phone rings. You're being called for work earlier than expected, and you need to report in less than 2 hours. Suddenly, dinner is over. Your plans disappear. The weekend you thought you had is gone before it even begins. For many conductors, that's not an occasional inconvenience. It's normal life. Freight railroads don't operate on Monday through Friday schedules. Freight moves when customers need it to move. That means trains leave during the middle of the night, early morning, weekends, holidays, and every hour in between. Many conductors spend years working on what's called an extra board, where they're essentially on standby waiting for the next assignment. Instead of knowing they'll work every morning at 8 o'clock, they might receive a call at midnight one day, 5 in the morning the next, and late afternoon after that. The schedule rarely follows any predictable rhythm. At first, many new hires think they'll get used to it. Some do. Many don't. The hardest part isn't necessarily working 12-hour shifts. It's never knowing when those 12 hours will begin. Planning anything becomes difficult. Family gatherings, birthdays, vacations, even routine doctor's appointments require careful coordination because work can interrupt them with very little notice. Friends eventually stop asking if you're available because the answer is usually, "I'm not sure yet." Over time, that uncertainty starts affecting more than just your calendar. It affects your sleep. The human body is designed around consistent routines. Railroad schedules often destroy those routines completely. A conductor might finish working overnight, sleep during the day, then receive another call requiring an afternoon departure only 2 days later. Just when the body begins adjusting, everything changes again. Many railroad employees describe feeling like they're permanently catching up on sleep without ever actually getting there. Fatigue has become one of the biggest concerns across the industry, not because railroaders aren't working hard, but because unpredictable schedules make quality rest incredibly difficult. Railroads have strict hours of service laws designed to prevent crews from working indefinitely, yet even with those protections, irregular sleep patterns remain one of the profession's biggest challenges. Then there's the weather. Most people picture conductors sitting comfortably inside a locomotive cab, watching scenery roll past the windshield. The reality is much different. Conductors spend significant time outside inspecting equipment, climbing ladders, walking alongside trains, throwing switches, coupling rail cars, and performing safety checks before movements begin. Those responsibilities don't disappear because it's raining or because temperatures have dropped below freezing. Picture yourself standing in a rail yard before sunrise in the middle of January. The wind cuts straight through heavy clothing. Steel handrails are covered with frost. Snow has packed around switches that need to be cleared before the train can leave. Every step across uneven ballast requires careful footing because one slip could easily result in an injury. Now imagine doing that several nights each week while your body is already running on an unpredictable sleep schedule. Summer brings a different set of challenges. Steel rails absorb enormous amounts of heat. Locomotives generate their own warmth, and rail yards often offer very little shade. Add heavy safety gear, long walks, inspecting trains, and physically demanding work, and the job quickly becomes exhausting even before the train starts moving. New hires are often surprised by just how physical the work actually is. Modern locomotives may contain sophisticated electronics, but freight railroading still requires plenty of manual labor. Conductors climb on and off equipment throughout the day, connect air hoses between rail cars, inspect brakes, secure hand brakes, and walk long distances through busy yards. On some assignments, it's not unusual to cover several miles on foot during a single shift. The responsibility grows even larger inside classification yards, where freight cars are constantly being sorted into new trains. At first glance, a rail yard can look like complete chaos. Locomotives move in multiple directions, rail cars roll through switches, crews communicate over radios while dozens of different operations happen simultaneously, but every movement follows detailed procedures. A single mistake can delay trains across an entire region, which is why conductors spend years learning the rules before becoming fully qualified. And those rules are extensive. Railroad operating manuals contain hundreds of pages covering signals, switching procedures, brake tests, radio communication, speed restrictions, emergency situations, hazardous materials, equipment inspections, and countless other scenarios. Conductors are expected to know these rules thoroughly because they're responsible for applying them correctly, often under pressure and sometimes in rapidly changing conditions. For many people, that's where the excitement begins. For others, it's where they begin wondering whether the career is worth everything they're giving up. Technology has changed railroading in ways that many people never expected. Modern locomotives are packed with computers that constantly monitor engine performance, fuel usage, braking systems, and dozens of other functions. Positive train control can automatically intervene if a train exceeds certain speed limits or approaches a signal that requires it to stop. Dispatchers have access to real-time information that would have been unimaginable just a few decades ago. On paper, these advancements should make the conductor's job easier. In some ways, they do, but they also create a different kind of pressure. Nearly every movement a crew makes is recorded. Speed, braking, throttle position, radio communications, and operating data can all be reviewed after a trip. Conductors know they're working in one of the most heavily regulated transportation industries in the world, where a small mistake can trigger investigations, retraining, or disciplinary action. That level of accountability is understandable when public safety is involved, but it also means the mental pressure never really disappears. Every shift demands complete focus because there's very little room for error. At the same time, the rail industry has been trying to do more with fewer people. Over the last several years, many railroads have adopted operating strategies focused on running longer trains with fewer crews. Instead of several shorter freight trains moving throughout the day, companies often combine freight into trains that can stretch well over 2 miles in length. While that improves efficiency on paper, it also changes the workload for the crews responsible for operating those trains. Longer trains introduce new challenges that aren't always obvious to the public. Air brakes take longer to fully apply throughout the train. Mechanical problems can occur hundreds of rail cars away from the locomotives. Inspecting equipment takes more time. Walking from one end of the train to the other can take the better part of an hour. If something goes wrong in the middle of nowhere, the crew may have to cover an incredible distance on foot just to reach the problem. Crew shortages only make those situations harder. When railroads don't have enough qualified conductors available, the employees who remain often work more frequently. Even with federal hours of service laws limiting how long crews can remain on duty, many conductors describe spending much of their lives either working, sleeping, or waiting for the next call. Eventually, people begin asking themselves a difficult question. Is the paycheck worth missing another holiday, another birthday, another weekend with family? For many, the answer eventually becomes no. There's another side of the profession that rarely appears in recruiting advertisements. Every experienced railroader knows someone who's been involved in a crossing collision or a trespasser incident. Freight trains simply cannot stop like cars. Even emergency braking requires enormous distances, and by the time a crew sees someone on the tracks, physics often leaves them with no way to avoid what happens next. Those events stay with people for years. Some employees continue working afterward. Others decide they can no longer carry that emotional weight. The industry is also facing uncertainty about what the future of the conductor position will look like. Advances in automation have sparked ongoing discussions about reducing crew sizes on certain operations. Supporters argue that modern technology can safely handle many tasks that once required additional crew members. Others point out that computers can't climb down from a locomotive to inspect equipment, troubleshoot mechanical failures, protect a disabled train, or respond to emergencies that don't follow a predictable script. Railroading is full of unexpected situations, and that's exactly where experienced conductors continue proving their value. Ironically, despite all these challenges, very few conductors complain about trains themselves. They love the locomotives. They love learning different territories. They love watching a freight train climb a mountain grade at sunrise or roll across endless prairie under a sky full of stars. Many still describe railroading as one of the most satisfying careers they've ever had. What wears them down isn't the railroad. It's everything the railroad demands in return. When people search online for why conductors are leaving, they often expect one dramatic answer: low pay, dangerous equipment, poor training. The reality is much more complicated. It's dozens of small sacrifices that slowly add up over time. The missed anniversaries, the interrupted sleep, the phone calls that arrive at 2 in the morning, the uncertainty of never knowing exactly when you'll be home again. Those things don't sound dramatic on their own, but after 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, they become the reason experienced railroaders start looking at other careers. That doesn't mean the profession is disappearing. Freight rail remains one of the most efficient ways to move goods across North America, and demand for skilled railroad employees isn't going away anytime soon. Every day, trains carry automobiles, grain, lumber, fuel, construction materials, shipping containers, and countless products that millions of people depend on without ever thinking about how they arrived. None of that happens without qualified crews who understand how to operate safely in an environment where mistakes can have enormous consequences. So why doesn't anyone want to be a train conductor anymore? The truth is, plenty of people still do. The bigger problem is that far fewer people want the lifestyle that comes with the job. The railroad asks for more than hard work. It asks for flexibility, patience, resilience, and the willingness to build your life around an industry that never truly sleeps. For some people, that's a challenge worth accepting because there's simply nothing else like railroading. For many others, especially younger workers who value predictable schedules and time at home, it's a sacrifice they're no longer willing to make. And that's why railroads aren't just competing with other transportation companies anymore. They're competing with every career that lets people know when they'll be home for dinner. Until that changes, becoming a train conductor will remain one of the most respected and one of the hardest jobs to keep.